our Prime Minister, Rajinder Saini from Prakasi Media Group. Yeah,
Pleasure to see you.
always, always. Thank you. Happy Vaisakhi.
So hello everyone, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਕਮਲ ਖਹਿਰਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ, and of course I'm here alongside the Right Honourable Prime Minister. I do want to acknowledge our wonderful colleagues Maninder Sidhu, Sania Sidhu, and Ruhi Sahota. ਤੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਹੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੂੰਗੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸਾਖੀ ਦੀਆਂ, ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਰੀਟੇਜ ਮੰਥ ਦੀਆਂ ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਡੇ ਨਗਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ, ਸੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਖ ਲੱਖ ਵਧਾਈਆਂ। And I just want to take an opportunity just to say thank you, because ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ to really get to the roots, ਜਿਹੜੇ issues ਹੈਗੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ, you're always at the forefront. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do, and of course very grateful today that we have our Prime Minister with us, who wants to share all the wonderful things that we're doing and what more we can to support our community. So with that, over to you, Prime Minister.
Well, I first of all, like Kamal did, I want to say thank you to all of you for the work that you do, because the work that community media like yours does actually connects with people where they are and tells the stories of, yes, that community, but also tells the story of Canada and the things that matter to them as Canadians in a way that they can connect with. And that is unbelievably important in these times. There's so much misinformation, disinformation. Professional journalism is more important than ever, and the role that community journalism plays is hugely impactful, and that's why I'm so glad to sit down with you. I've sat down with, I think, almost all of you one-on-one before, but it's nice to be able to do it together on Khalsa Day to highlight the importance and the value of this community. There is always a temptation for politicians to speak to every community differently and try and create a very targeted and almost transactional approach in how different politicians reach out to the communities. I've never believed in that directly. I believe in speaking to communities as Canadians. The things that are of concern to you, yes, we will highlight the $6 million investment in the Sikh culture and arts at the Royal Ontario Museum. But mostly what I want to talk about is the things that impact on your community and your community members as Canadians, whether it's housing prices, whether it's childcare, whether it's caring for our elders, whether it's creating a good future for our young people, whether it's concerns around the international context in general. For me, this is an opportunity to speak with Canadians who are looking at how the future is going and have particular perspectives that allow me to engage and connect. And that's true with most communities, but with the Sikh community in particular, because the values and the ideals of Sikhism are so closely aligned with fundamental Canadian values of respect, openness, compassion, generosity, hard work, justice. Like, these are things that are more important today than ever before. And that's why it's such a pleasure to celebrate Khalsa Day, celebrate Vaisakhi, and celebrate Canada at the same time. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to our conversation.
Okay.
We start with you,
Prime Minister, most of the Canadians are struggling to pay their mortgages. Interest rates are way high at this moment. We don't know when they will be down. In Peel region, we are seeing lots of challenges of crime, particularly cars theft, and we are glad that our federal government took the initiative and did Auto Summit. We don't know what outcomes we have after that. Canada is going through a lot of challenges at this time, particularly post-COVID. Government did a wonderful job during the COVID time. We were prepared for this kind of situation. What are your long-term and short-term plans to take country out of this situation now?
Excellent question, and you're absolutely right that following COVID, where we did better than most of our peer countries, where the economy bounced back faster, the entire world was faced with an inflation challenge that wasn't as bad in Canada as it was in many other places, but still was very difficult for families with grocery bills, with fuel prices. And we've worked very, very hard over the past years to bring down inflation. And bringing down inflation is what's going to allow interest rates to come down again. We are hopeful that in the coming months, we will see interest rates start to move down, and that'll be a huge relief for many, many Canadians. Part of the challenge, though, is that it's not just about the cost of housing, it's about the availability of housing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that people with mortgages are worried. There's so many people who don't even imagine ever getting mortgages because they can't imagine owning a home. And that's one of the things that we absolutely wanted to turn around. Because of all the different challenges Canada has faced over the past years, the idea that Canada isn't as fair as it used to be, that particularly for young people, that the economy doesn't work for them. If we think about our parents' generation or generations past that came to this country, got good jobs, worked very hard, but were able to buy homes and build a future in the community. Young people today, they work as hard, if not harder, than any previous generation, but they can't imagine buying a home. That's something that requires a government to step up and support. So whether it's the largest plan on housing that we've ever seen, whether it's investments that are directly helping young people, whether it's asking the most successful and wealthiest people to pay a little more so we can invest in young people, that's how we're doing it. And that's that idea of fairness that runs through everything we do. And quite frankly, everything that we can all agree on in Canada, that there should be a fair chance for everyone to succeed. On the auto theft issue, it's one that we've taken very seriously. You mentioned the Auto Summit and wondered what outcomes have come from it. How about 600 cars recovered, worth $35 million at the Port of Montreal? How about elements in the budget where we are banning the kind of technology that people are using to break into cars? We're also making significant investments in fighting organized crime with more serious consequences. We stepped up with over $120 million just for the government of Ontario, for partnerships with Ontario, $28 million for the Canada Border Services Agency, $15 million for other police agencies. There is work being done, and we're going to continue to work with it on all partners because it's not right that people should feel so impacted by the theft of their vehicles and increasingly by the home invasions that are coming with it. We have to put a stop to that. That's what this government's focused on.
Okay, my next follow-up question is that Canada was always hot favorite destination for immigrants from all over the world. But of late, we are seeing now, we have hundreds and thousands of international students here. Now, government is reviewing their policies, immigration policies, that putting caps on some categories. So what we see the future of immigration in Canada?
No. Immigration built this country's success. And not just economically, but in terms of the strong, vibrant communities that make up this country. As a government, we are committed to immigration and we remain committed to immigration. We have actually increased the number of permanent residents every year over the past years. We're now taking in about 465,000 a year. We'll be on our way to 500,000 a year. The permanent residents that arrive every year are the right number for Canada. We will continue to make sure we're bringing them in. The challenge we've seen over the past years, particularly post-COVID, is in three different categories. One, asylum seekers, whether it was people coming up from Mexico or people coming irregular arrivals or people claiming asylum in ways that was putting too much of a burden on the system, even though we continue to be a country that is a welcoming place for people who need to flee war and violence. Second, temporary workers. There has been a massive increase in temporary workers as we've seen labor shortages, we've seen challenges. This is good that we continue to be open to the world on that, but the numbers of temporary workers have grown so fast over the past few years that there's a worry that it's driving down wages for temporary workers. It's creating hardship for Canadians, even as we do know we need to bring more people in. So we're trying to work with the provinces to get the temporary worker numbers to a responsible and sustainable level. And finally, on international students. International students have always been an incredible contribution to Canada. The idea that the best and brightest from around the world would come study in our extraordinary universities and colleges, and then either stay and build a life here now that they have Canadian experience and Canadian education, or return home and bring the qualities and the education they have to have an impact in their home communities. Both of those things are great. Unfortunately, over the past 2 or 3 years, the numbers of international students have exploded.
Yeah.
Both the educational institutions and the provinces allowed for an increase from 200,000 to 700,000 rapidly in ways that has made the international students themselves incredibly vulnerable. They are having a hard time with the cost of living increases, harder time finding good places to live where they're not being taken advantage of, harder time with mental health challenges, with affordability, with getting the quality education they came for. That's not happening. And we need to make sure we have a system where international students are properly protected and supported, because that's good for Canada and it's good for the world. That's why we put a limit and a cap for 2 years on international students, because the provinces weren't doing the work they needed to do to ensure accreditation and acceptance, and indeed the colleges weren't doing a good enough job of making sure they had the resources and support for all these young people who were coming in and paying a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
So the federal government had to step in and say, okay, we've got to figure out how to make sure that the success of international students is at the center of our system, and that's what we've done.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and happy Baisakhi and happy Khalsa Day celebration.
Thank you, Rajan. Gurpreet.
Hi, thank you, Prime Minister. Gurpreet from Y Media. So my first question is, how are our relations with India?
India is, I often comment in visits to India or in engagement with Indian diplomats that Canada and India are the world's 2 largest democracies. Us by size, them by population. And we should be able to get along. We are also a country of tremendous diversity, and that should be seen as more of a richness than it actually is, I think, in the current context in India. But the way Canadians are able to get along with our diversity adding to our country is, I think, something that other countries can learn from. Obviously, there are real challenges right now between Canada and India, because one of the most important roles of any Canadian Prime Minister is to protect Canadian citizens, and to know that there are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is a real problem. It's a problem for the rules-based order and the principles of free, open democracies and sovereignty that we stand for. It's also a problem in our relations with India, because we cannot ignore that. My responsibility to make sure Canadians are protected is my most important job. But whether we talk about the people-to-people connections with India, whether we talk about the business connections with India, whether we talk about the work together on the international stage to fight climate change, to promote democracy and human rights, India is an important partner to Western democracies. So we want to get through this challenging situation, but there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be an understanding that respecting the rules and the laws and the sovereignty of Canada and Canadian citizens, regardless of their politics. In Canada, people are free to believe and support the political parties they want around the world. That may be an irritation for the Indian government, but it's part and parcel of being a Canadian, is you get to support whatever beliefs you have. That's part of what makes Canada a free country, and that's something we're always going to defend.
Okay, thank you. And my follow-up is more into sports. T20 Cricket World Cup is happening, and it's happening here in North America, and our Canadian national cricket team has qualified, and the first match, June 1st, Canada is playing against United States. So what's your message to our Canadian players?
I am so proud of Canadian cricketers. We have seen an explosion of participation, of growth. I was in British Columbia a few weeks ago visiting with young members of our national team. It is such a source of pride, and it is something that we are taking as a real strength and richness of this country. So I look forward to seeing us do very, very well in the tournament, and especially look forward to taking on the United States.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gurpreet. Rafinder.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, because this is the first time when federal budget includes funding for a Sikh museum to Royal Ontario Museum, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. But my question is about housing. Pre-budget announcements, they were focused on housing. Then in the budget we saw, the budget is mainly about housing and affordability. But only billions of dollars will be rotated this fiscal year. So how do you think you will be able to solve the problem the Canadians, the youth is facing right now?
First of all, we have been focused on solving the housing challenges since we launched a national housing strategy in 2017. The previous Conservative government had actually said that the federal government has no job to do in housing, and they, for 10 years, pulled out of it entirely, especially from affordable housing. And the housing minister at that time was Mr. Poilievre, who is not putting forward any real solutions either. He's saying that the investments we've made in housing have actually made it worse, which doesn't make any sense. What we've been able to do since 2017 is see 2.5 million Canadians get into new homes or refurbished homes because of that housing strategy. But we also know post-pandemic, there is a much more important need. So our focus is on a number of different things. First of all, making sure that we're increasing the stock of housing, making sure that we're changing the way housing is built in this country. That means changing zoning rules, densification rules to make sure that within walking distance of public transit or a university, there's far more density, far more apartments, and far more affordable rentals as well. We need to be building apartments that people can rent. We're also putting forward public lands, which means when there's a federal post office or a federal military base or federal office building, there's opportunities to actually work with the developer to build on that land with a 99-year lease, which will reduce the cost for the developer and allow them to build much more quickly. That's actually one of the contrasts with the Conservative plan that says we have all these federal lands, we should sell them to the highest bidder and have them build housing on it. But think about it for a second. If a developer is paying top dollar for a piece of land, are they going to be able to build affordable housing, or are they going to be able to build luxury condos and very expensive places? That's why the Conservative approach helps the wealthiest, but it doesn't help the families that need it. So we're doing that to unlock affordable housing. We're also moving forward on supports directly for renters. It makes no sense that a young person who pays $2,000 in rent doesn't have that $2,000 that they pay every month, like clockwork, counted towards their credit score so that they can qualify for a mortgage sooner and a lower rate. So those are changes we're making. We're also creating opportunities to have tax-free savings accounts to save up for a mortgage, for a down payment on a first home. We're also moving forward on a number of other issues, whether it's taking the GST off of purpose-built apartment rentals, working with the municipalities with the Accelerator Fund, moving forward with the Canada Builds program that's based on the BC Builds that's going to create far more affordable housing. We have tackled this problem in a way that also recognizes the need to support the most vulnerable and counter homelessness and counter the encampments that are a challenge and a threat to so many different community safety elements and dealing with addiction and other issues. There's lots of things to do on that. That's why we put forward the most comprehensive, ambitious, and the largest investment in housing that this country has ever seen. And it is going to solve the housing crisis over the coming years. And the biggest thing is that young people, our goal is that young people who right now are saying, I'm never going to be able to afford a home, in the coming years will say, oh, wait, now there is a path for me to afford a home. It won't be tomorrow, but it will be in the coming years that we're going to be able to save up and buy a home, and it'll be affordable. That's the challenge that we're tackling.
We understand you're showing them a path to buy home, but federal government cannot do everything alone. Provincial government and municipalities, they need to step up. So how would you encourage them?
Well, first of all, with municipalities, we created the Housing Accelerator Fund, which was an opportunity for them to step up and aggressively change the zoning for 4 units as of right, for 4 stories as of right, more use of public lands, densification rules around public transit and universities. And that was billions of dollars on the table to sign 179 different agreements with municipalities across the country, but only those municipalities that were very, very ambitious. Windsor, Ontario, for example, didn't want to be ambitious enough, so we didn't sign with them. We didn't give them, so they missed out on tens of millions of dollars because they didn't hit the ambition level that we expected from them. And on the provincial side, we're doing a similar thing. We know we can't build lots more housing without investments in water treatment plants, in roads, in more infrastructure to unlock that. And that is a cost on provinces and municipalities. Well, we said we'll put forward $6 billion for wastewater and housing enabling infrastructure, but you only get it if you're going to be very ambitious about the rules, about how you're going to be able to build that housing. So any province or any municipality that says, no, we don't want to build more housing, we'll say, okay, that's your choice. We'll go next door and give them lots of money where they want to build housing. So we're not imposing on provinces or municipalities. But if they want to get the significant federal money we're bringing in for ambition around housing, they're going to have to change the way they do things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This is Jasprit from Omni News. Coming back to the Nijjas case, it's been roughly, I guess, more than a 10th month, and India has continuously denied that they have no role behind this killing. What's the progress in that investigation?
As you know, Canada has a strong and independent justice system and very, very effective police agencies. They are doing their work. In Canada, the work that our police does, the work that our justice system does, is completely independent of politicians. That is part of what makes us a strong and free society. I can tell you that the work done by our intelligence and our police agencies is ongoing. It is very good and rigorous work, and when the time comes for them to conclude that investigation, there will be some very, very clear things that everyone around the world, including in India, will see as to responsibilities and involvement.
And India's Foreign Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, allegedly saying that Canada is a safe paradise for terrorism. What's your take on it?
Canada has always stood very strongly against terrorism, against violence, against intimidation. We have always been a country of the rule of law. We will always and have always followed up anytime any of our fellow countries around the world have expressed concerns about behaviors or about violence or about criminality. We take them seriously, we always do. What we will not do, however, is go after people because they're saying things that the Indian government doesn't like, things that the Indian government disagrees with. This is Canada. People come to this country from places all around the world, and some of them come to Canada partly because they are in disagreement with what their home country is doing or what the government of the home country is doing, or they don't feel as safe in the home country. on top of wanting to build a better life for themselves in this country. It is fundamental for Canada that we protect people coming from around the world, whether they be Iranian citizens or Russian citizens or from any other country around the world. And we will always stand up to that. I understand that members of the Indian government have concerns around being in disagreement with some of the positions that Canadian citizens take. We're a free country. We allow for that freedom of expression and freedom to protest, but we continue to make sure that public safety, that laws are obeyed, that violence is not encouraged or allowed. We're going to continue to keep all communities safe because everyone should feel safe in Canada, and that's our job. Our job is not to crack down on political protest. That's something that we allow in Canada. Other countries can make their decisions, but we will continue to defend Canadians' rights to freedom of expression. All Canadians from every corner of the world.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. This side is Taranjeet from Red FM. So my question is, how is our government trying or working to safeguard our democratic process or institutions, as our opposition is saying that our democracy is in danger?
The first thing to know is that over the past years, everywhere around the world, in every democracy, there have been increased attempts by foreign governments to influence or interfere with our democratic institutions. We are seeing around the world countries like China and Russia and others wanting to destabilize democracies, wanting to have people believe less in their institutions, in the freedom of their elections, because that is a way of seeing democracy weaken, which is something that certain countries around the world want very much. That is why, when we got elected in 2015, we created a number of mechanisms that had never existed before. You know, the Conservative government before never brought in oversight by parliamentarians, never brought in tools to ensure the integrity of our elections. We did that in our very first term. And because we did that, the conclusion of all the experts and all of our security agencies is the elections in 2019 and 2021, the last two elections in Canada, were free and fair. There were attempts at interference by a number of countries, but those attempts at interference and those interference activities did not result in a weakening of our elections or our electoral processes. That's something that everyone needs to remember, that yes, there are countries trying to interfere, but it didn't work. The elections, the last two elections, were decided by Canadians, both at the national level and at the individual riding level. But we need to continue to be vigilant because more and more countries are looking to interfere in democracies around the world, particularly where they have citizens. And we are going to continue to do that work. That's why right now there is a foreign interference inquiry going on to make recommendations, to see what was done, see what needs to continue to do. But the bottom line is this: the election integrity held. The elections were decided by Canadians, and the next election will have more systems and more protections to make sure that despite activities around foreign interference, the election will be decided by Canadians once again.
My second question is regarding the housing crisis, as we were talking about, and you plan to do some income verification through CRA, and are you seriously considering this?
Sorry,
like you are planning to do some income verification through CRA.
Income verification,
yeah.
yes.
So are you seriously considering this?
Well, I think when you talk about affordable housing, if that's what you're talking about, Taranjeet, it's important to see that people who are struggling and have low income levels are able to find affordable housing. And that's why means testing, or seeing and adjusting the rent someone pays related to how much they are earning in affordable housing units is a really important thing. But one of the models that I've seen across the country involve a large apartment building or a large number of units where some units, because of income testing, will have much, much lower rents, much more affordable rents than others. But nobody in the building will know who's living in an affordable home or who's paying market prices for it. And that allows for more community, it allows for less discrimination, and it allows for a better and more cohesive society.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanaji. Well, thank you all for taking the time with me here today. The focus, and I was speaking about it first with Virginia, but it goes through all the interventions. Fairness is what this budget is all about, because that's what Canada's all about. The idea that you can come here, you can build a better future for yourself and especially for your kids, and your kids can then succeed better than even you did. That's the story of this country. That's the promise of this country. And right now, because of the pandemic, because of climate change, because of the changing nature of work and advances in technology, because of shifting geopolitics, people are worried that that doesn't hold true anymore. That Canada's not as fair as it used to be, particularly for young people, young families just starting out in life. That's where, whether it's around moving towards $10 a day childcare, whether it's assuring dental care for seniors. Right now we're seeing close to 2 million seniors who are eager to get free dental care as it starts up this summer. Whether it's moving forward on things like recognizing that someone with diabetes, and Sonia has worked on this with the National Diabetes Strategy, if they can't afford their insulin, not only does that lead to terrible outcomes for them in their health, but it also leads to way more costly pressures on the healthcare system. So Canada moving forward with national pharmacare for diabetes medication is going to keep people better off and help with affordability. As we're moving forward on grocery competition and a grocery code of conduct, that's going to take pressures off of people. These are all things that are about making the economy more fair. And one of the ways we're able to do it is we're saying there are people, even as the economy is more difficult, who've done very, very well. Those people should be paying a little bit more, especially on their passive income. That's why we're asking the wealthiest 0.1% in this country to pay a little more in taxes so that we can make things fairer for vulnerable communities, for young families, and for every generation. That is the fight we have right now. And that's the kind of fight that we're having with the Conservatives. Because the fundamental approach of the Conservative Party is the government should get out of the way and do less. They should invest less in jobs for the future. We shouldn't have invested in Volkswagen, in Stellantis, in Honda. We shouldn't be investing to create jobs and industries for the future. We shouldn't be investing in dental care. They are opposed to dental care. We shouldn't be expanding childcare. They are opposed to childcare. They think if you get out of the way, everything will be fine. That's an example of the Conservatives still thinking that if you give advantages and breaks to the wealthiest, everyone else will be just fine. That hasn't worked. On the contrary, everywhere in the world, it's getting harder for young people. So Canada, this government is choosing to step up and saying, no, the government does have a role to play in housing. The government does have a role to play in childcare. The government does have a role to play in investing in healthcare across the country with $200 billion that we announced last year. That difference is what Canadians are going to be choosing in a year and a half in the next election. What kind of country do we want to be? Are we a country that's grounded in science, in building together, in investing in communities and in individuals? Or are we a government that steps back, crosses its arms and say, fend for yourselves? That's not what Canada has been. That's not what Canada needs to be. And that choice about what kind of country we are is the decision that Canadians get to make next year. And I'm excited to be talking with all of you and with Canadians over the next year about the future we're building for our kids and our grandkids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.